Hi, and welcome to another episode of the TPF podcast. Today is the second edition of our TPF Expert Insights Series. And today we have two TPF experts with us. So welcome David Floyd and Paul Simmons. Welcome, guys.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much.
It's intimidating to be with such franchise podcasting royalty, but we'll try to hold up our end of the bargain here.
Yeah, thank you very much for the invite. I'm looking forward to this. This is exciting, very exciting.
Yeah, and this is a good one. I get to turn the table on my husband and ask some hard questions here, right on camera for everyone to see.
She says that like that's an unusual thing.
Well, let's start out there. Let's give a little bit of background. Dave, why don't you start? Tell our listeners a little bit about you and your background.
Yeah, so have been in the franchising space for over a decade now. Was your typical corporate America guy, like a lot of our clients, and like a lot of our clients never loved it, was always looking for something else. And so about 13 years ago, got out of corporate America, bought a franchise, and haven't looked back. And if I'm being honest, I don't miss corporate America a whole lot. And over the last 13 years now, as you know, Andrea, we've invested in and built two very successful franchise businesses, and have also been working in this side of the business, helping other people now explore whether or not franchising might be something that would be a good fit for them. And so I think it's really helpful having that perspective of someone who has done it before, who's been in their shoes, who knows what it's like to make that transition from corporate America into business ownership. And excited to be here and share some knowledge. And franchising has been a great thing for us. It's changed our life. And if we can help other people make a similar transition, we're certainly excited to help them do so.
That's awesome. So Paul, let's turn it over to you. I want to hear a little bit from you, and you have an interesting story of how you found TPF. So
yeah, definitely. I'm a little bit different. I get a call from Mark Schnerman, who obviously started the Perfect Franchise, and Mark and I started going down the journey of franchise exploration. And as we're going through it, Mark's like, "Hey, you know what? I'm thinking about starting this thing, and I think you'd be good at it. And I'm going to start this thing," right? So it's a very undefined thing that he kept sort of explaining, as Mark is like to do. And I'm like, all right, I don't really know what you do, but okay, this is kind of interesting. And as I got input from other people in the industry and some other people that I was speaking to in franchising, they said really good things. So I kind of took the plunge and decided that I was going to forego sort of getting back into the corporate vibe and give this a shot. And it's been probably the most rewarding decision I've ever made.
Yeah. Client turned consultant. Great story.
Well, we're happy to have you, Paul. So I want to start out the questions, and this will be round robin. Anybody can jump in. But when we talk to clients, you'll hear pretty often that I'm wary about franchising. Maybe I want to do something on my own. Why do you think that franchising is a better route for an aspiring entrepreneur as opposed to doing it on their own? Who wants to go first?
I'll take that one.
Yeah. Right, go ahead, Paul.
I'll go ahead and take it. Sure. So I think, the things that I speak to people about as it relates to franchising, and again, coming from being a newbie into it, what I look at, and oftentimes I'm putting myself in their shoes, because I think, recently I was. So when I look at it, I think some of the things that are really interesting that franchising provides is one, some of the documentation and financials. So, within the franchise disclosure document or the FDD, there's the item 19, which is essentially, an amalgamation of the previous year's results from all the folks that are currently franchising. I think the ability to go in and look and see how people are doing financially, you don't have that benefit if you're starting your own company to actually have the ability to go in and kind of understand financially, oh, this is what I might be able to do. And it's not a guarantee, certainly, but it at least gives you an idea. And I'd say the other thing that I really speak to people about is the fact that you can speak to other franchisees that are in the system. So you can speak to people that have been at this maybe not much longer than you, maybe a year in, and you can ask them questions like, what was the biggest mistake that you made? Have you felt that everything that was represented as you were signing up is really true? So you can ask anything, when you have those sort of one-on-ones. And I think those are two things that really stand out to me in terms of like being able to join a franchise and have that ability and have that, capability to kind of understand what you're getting into before you get into it. I think that really sets franchising apart from starting a business.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no doubt.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I would add to it, for me, when I was in corporate America and I was looking at what do I do? I knew I wanted to get out of it. I knew I'd always been entrepreneurial. I knew I wanted to start a business, but I didn't know what to do. I didn't really have any brilliant ideas of my own. And realistically, even if I did, I don't know that I had the skill set to go out and make it happen. Right? I knew corporate America. I knew that world. I knew how to be successful in that world. I didn't know how to start a business, right? And that's what franchising gives you. It gives you the blueprint. I always felt like if I had the plan, I could go out and I could execute on it, but I needed the plan. And that's what franchising provides. It provides that blueprint that tells you step by step how to run a business successfully. It gives you the training, it gives you the support, it gives you all the marketing capabilities, the operational platforms, the technology platform. So it gives you everything that you need to build and run a business successfully. And I think for most people, especially those who don't have any experience being an entrepreneur, having that plan, having that playbook is exactly what they need in order to go out there and build that business successfully.
Yeah, agreed.
I think that's important. I mean, people don't realize how much you get with the franchise. And it's funny, Kris and I did a podcast with Andy Fuller from Mosquito Hunters, and he went into that, how he started the business, everything he did, leaving corporate America, changing what he called the Superman suit. And he would put his suit on and go out and spray, and starting that out, all those things that they figured out, now they're handing over to you to execute on. And I think that that's really important for clients to understand. And so I think the question that always comes up is, this is more expensive. Why couldn't I just do this on my own? So is starting a franchise more expensive than just going on your own? How would you answer that for clients?
Yeah, I would say, Andrea, that's key. I think there are people who are not cut out for franchising, people who should not buy a franchise. Most of those reasons are probably temperamentally, they're not fit. But the number one reason, I think, and it's not always stated, but when people are wary of franchises or they're still leaning towards doing something on their own, they're doing it because it seems like it's less expensive to do something on your own, right? And I can say unequivocally that franchising over the long term saves you so much money. It's not even close, because the idea isn't just to have a website, have an LLC, have some marketing materials. Can that be cheaper than buying into a franchise? Sure. But if the real goal is the goal is to build a business, to have 500 customers, like I think you guys had with your franchise. If that's the goal, what it takes to get from here to there, if you try to do that on your own, it's going to be way more expensive. Because the way I always explain it to people is, if you're really good with a spreadsheet, good with numbers, which I am not, but I'm pretty sure you can probably project everything. If you really get nitty gritty, you can go in and you can figure out all your expenses and this and that. And you can project it all very cleanly, except for one thing. What is your cost of trial and error going to be over the first 6 months, year, 2 years, 3 years? You can't do it. And that is the variable that will kill you. It's why when you see most independent businesses fail and you ask them why they failed, most will say they ran out of money. And that's just another way of saying, I didn't know how expensive my mistakes were going to be. I didn't know how many mistakes I was going to make. I didn't know how expensive they would be. And while I was making those mistakes, there's also a missed opportunity cost, right? You could have been doing it the right way and making money. At that time, you were doing it the wrong way and losing money. And all that is what a franchise saves you from. And you can't project that in a spreadsheet. So when someone says, oh, there's this X franchise fee, it stares you right in the face. It looks really expensive. But that's the power of franchising, because they just fixed it. What's your cost? It's that franchise fee. You can budget for it. You can plan for it. You can get a loan for it. And now you're good. right?
Yep.
So
I think
I
that's
agree with that.
100%. Yeah. I, as someone who's done this twice, I could tell you both times I feel like what we got far exceeded what we paid to be part of the franchise, right? Like you said it. Our first franchise was a residential cleaning franchise, right? You could not find a business with a lower barrier to entry than a cleaning business, right? Literally
Yeah.
anybody can start a cleaning business. So why buy a franchise, right? It's like you said, we were able to build that business into $1 million a year business, 500 clients, 35 employees. We're doing 50 cleans a day. Could I have built a cleaning business on my own? Maybe, right? Would I have ever gotten to that? Very unlikely. Certainly not as quickly as I did. So, was there a cost to it? Sure. But what I got from them and what I was able to build more than, exceeded and made up for whatever any kind of entry costs I had or royalty for being part of the system.
Yeah.
That's
Good
great.
answers. You guys are smart. I'm glad you're on here.
No,
What should
I
we
think
talk
it's
about
good.
next, Andrea?
Well, I mean, I think if we dive into that a little bit, so what you're getting with the franchise is that proven model. You're then coming in and executing on it. I have a lot of clients that say to me, so I have no, room for me to be creative on my own, put my own personality into it. Is that what happens in a franchise? You just go in and you're just kind of a robot and you just do exactly what they're doing and that's the only thing you come at? Or can you switch the business and do it a little bit on your own and not even switch it, just add to it, decide who to hire, all those different pieces?
Yeah. I talk to a lot of the folks that I speak to, again, depending on what the particular franchise is, but I'll give you an example. So there's a franchise we represent that is for basically light therapy. So, going in and kind of getting red light treatments and different things like that. When I talk to the owners, and again, I said this earlier, I always put myself in their shoes. So I say, how would I go about doing this business? Like, what would I do that would be different or that would make my business stickier? And so a lot of times I talk to them when I speak to them, I say, listen, this is the type of thing where you'd want to go out and build community, right? So you've got all these people that are buying into the fact that this treatment has benefits and they're all in for it, but they go in for individual treatments. So you never really see the other people that are involved. You never really see the other people that might reinforce some of the things that you're feeling. So I'm like, so I would throw like a monthly mixer or maybe a couple times, maybe a few times a year. I would throw a mixer with all my clients, have them show up back at the location, get somebody to come out and speak about the benefits, have a doctor that's locally that buys into it, speak about the benefits, get everybody there, cheese and wine, have all those people meet so that they're able to understand the community that they're a part of, not just being an individual that goes in and gets a treatment. So I think about things like that. I think that those are the things that separate, someone just sort of running a standard business to people that are able to go out and sort of bring life more so bring life to their business. Those are the types of things that, again, that's what comes across to me. And I'm like, if I were to do this is exactly how I would go about doing it. And I think when you impart those things and you get the right entrepreneur and the right people thinking that way, they'll then add things onto that I'm not even thinking about. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's a great idea as well. So I think it's like having that ability. No one's, corporate's not going to prevent you from doing that. And in fact, they may embrace it and start to encourage it amongst all their different stores.
Yeah. I think that's great because I mean, that's one thing. And I don't know if it was you, Paul, or Kris that mentioned this, but when you buy a franchise, you're not just having a partner with the franchisor, you're partnering with all the other franchisees. And they have a lot of things that they're trying and testing. You can pick up the phone and call them and say, I mean, Dave, how many times did we call another franchisee and say, how do I do this? How do I do that? Have you thought about this? How did you hire? Everybody's willing to sort of share like, hey, I had this great idea for this mixer. And you're like, great, I'd add that on. That brings in more revenue. That brings people, brings in the culture that I'm looking for. So there's a lot of different opportunities out there to expand on sort of that game plan.
Yeah. You effectively have, all these other franchisees who are all running the same business as you, but they all have their own ideas. They all have their different ways of doing things, right? And everybody shares that information. I always like to say, the franchising provides the system. It provides the playbook. It gives you the guardrails, right? And to be successful, you want to stay within those guardrails, but within the guardrails, there's a lot of freedom. There's a lot of flexibility. You are absolutely running your business. Your spin, your character, your culture, that's all you. You bring all of that to the table. So you do have a lot of autonomy as a franchisee, but you also have that structure and that framework to help get you to where you want to be.
Yeah, I would say, especially with the franchises we work with, right? We're not placing people in McDonald's or Dunkin' Donuts, right? Where they've been around for decades and they really got it figured out. So they're not really, I'm assuming, not that interested in your great ideas because, they've got it.
Yeah.
But we're placing folks in emerging franchises, franchises that are, should be the household names of tomorrow. But when you're joining a franchise that has 50 owners or 100 owners, to David's point, you've got all these like-minded people working on the same business. And the way that the franchise gets better and better is that everybody's sharing best practices, right?
Yep.
Being a franchisee doesn't mean you don't get to be creative. It doesn't mean that you're a robot. But it does mean, I think, simply put, you got to be a team player. Like, you're part of a team. And in any team, there's rules of engagement, rules of interaction, and there are guardrails. And so you have to be willing to hear no once in a while. If you have lots of great ideas, you bring them to the corporate office, say, I got another great idea for marketing and another one and another one. And I think, if they are great ideas, then the franchise is going to say, great, it's a great idea. We've never done it. Let's try it out with you. And if it works, we want to share it with everybody else. But once in a while, you're going to have an idea that isn't great. They know it's not great. Maybe they've tried it before and they're going to say, yeah, don't do that. We've done it. Didn't work. Here's why it didn't work. And you have to be okay with that. Right. Because I've been there. I've been a franchisor where there was this one particular, I'll tell you, this is 10, 12 years ago. We'd put new franchises in business. They'd come out of training. And I don't know who these salespeople were for movie theater advertising, but they were really good. And they were Johnny on the spot, and people have a new business and they'd get pitched movie theater advertising. And everybody, all my franchisees wanted to do it. And they'd call us and we'd say, no, doesn't work. And I started thinking, I hung up the phone. I just saved you $7,000, right? Because we know it doesn't work. We can get into why it doesn't work, but with one phone call, we just saved you $7,000 in trial and error right there, right? So you do have to be willing to hear no and believe that the franchisor has your best interests at heart, right?
Yeah. So Kris, you hit on, who we bring into our portfolio. And we've talked a little bit, we've had Mark on the show and Mark's talked about this of, who do we bring in? What are the brands that we're looking at? There's thousands of franchise brands out there, but we really only have a couple hundred in our portfolio. So I think a good question to sort of ask the group here is, why are fewer choices better? Why do we have less people in our portfolio, and how do we choose who are coming in? I think it's important for people to hear.
Yeah.
Jump
Who wants to take that?
I can take that one. Yeah. The reality is there are thousands of franchises out there, right? There's not thousands of good franchises out there. There's a lot of bad franchises. That's the reality. And one of the biggest mistakes that people make are investing in bad franchises. And I think that's where we can provide so much value because we've got so much experience as a team in franchising in the industry. We know the brands that we work with specifically, we work with them for a reason because they are the best of the best. And we work very closely with them. We know them. We know their leadership teams. We have clients who have gone forward with them before that give us feedback. And so we've been able to narrow that universe of thousands of brands down to what are the best 100 brands, right? 50 brands. And I don't think if you're not inside of franchising, if you're not part of this world that we're in, it's very difficult to do that from the outside. You just don't have the information. And so I think being able to work with us where we've got that information, kind of the inside scoop, if you will, on what are the best of the best, it eliminates those bad brands and really make sure that what you're looking at are the brands that have really great systems, great leadership team, great technology platforms, right? So that if you invest in them, you know that you're getting a really solid partner.
Yeah, and I think I totally agree with that. I don't think you could say anything different. I definitely think that's 100% accurate. I kind of position us a lot of times as more of a boutique provider in the marketplace. Some of the folks that are out there are doing thousands of franchises, and I don't know how, from my perspective, you can even get your head around that many companies and really sort of understand them. So I think that just doesn't even make sense to me. Coming again from somebody that's new at this. The other thing I would say is the diligence around our team in terms of when there are red flags that pop up, the fact that that's discussed internally, the fact that, it's covered from so many people with expertise within the field that sort of vet these things. So I think that, when our spider sense tingles, we go deep to find out, hey, is this real? We're hearing maybe some negative things. We need to suss out if this is true. And if it is, then they're no longer in our system. So, I really like that. But just from like I said, I view us as kind of a boutique in terms of how we approach it and the amount of time that we spend with our clients. We don't just throw them over the fence and then hope that, something's going to happen. We really spend a lot of time, on an ongoing basis, making sure that they're understanding where the franchise is coming from and vice versa.
Yeah. So we're talking about our portfolio of brands, and we don't have thousands. We've covered that. But also within the couple hundred that we do have, it's not always what people expect, right? Because usually on the very first phone call, when the word franchise comes up, people say, yeah, I'm familiar with franchises, and they'll throw out Chick-fil-A, Dunkin' Donuts, McDonald's, right? And it may surprise people, but I would say food franchises are, what would you guys say? 2% of our portfolio, maybe? So
I say like 15. That's probably high.
Yeah. So maybe
5 for sure.
Yeah, I'm not good at math. It's probably 15.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
But so talk to the listeners about, well, if it's not food, what are we talking about, and why would folks want to look at non-food franchises, and what are the advantages of some of those non-food franchises?
Yeah. Well, it's understandable, right? People know what they see, and they see food, right? It's visible, and I generally don't like food franchises. I think their margins aren't good. I think the failure rates are some of the highest in the industry, right? And people don't realize, we generally break franchises down into 3 categories, right? There are home service franchises, there are business service franchises, and there are retail franchises. And most people don't know that these other types of franchises even exist, as you said, Kris. So home service franchises are anything that you can do to the inside or out of a home, right? It's floor coverings, it's painting, it's windows, it's gutters, it's siding, it's pet care, it's senior care, right? There's so many different options there. They tend to have much lower cost of entry, right, which people like. Great ROIs, much faster ramp-up times. You don't need a physical location in most cases. A lot of them are home-based, so it can be a great option for a lot of people, right? Business services are B2B franchises, things like marketing services or IT services, right? Again, most of them are home-based, much lower cost, but very scalable. You can get started very quickly. They tend to lend themselves well to people who have a good sales and business development background. And then you have retail as well, right? Food is part of retail. Retail is your brick and mortar brand. So you've got that physical location, but within retail, food is just one tiny component. There's health and wellness, there's kids, there's pets, right? There are so many different options if you are interested in brick and mortar. And the good thing about brick and mortar, it tends to lend itself more easily to semi-absentee ownership. Most of them are manager run, but they are more expensive. That comes with a higher initial investment. So there's trade-offs, and understanding what the client is looking for, how much time they have to devote to the business, what their budget is, what their role is going to be. Understanding all those things is what allows us to help guide them into the type of franchise that might be the best fit for them within those categories.
Yeah. Go ahead, Paul. Yeah.
No, I totally agree. And I would say, to your point, I don't show very much in the way of food, actually. And for the same reason, I don't love the margins, right? So I'm a big proponent of digging into the franchise disclosure documents and looking up the margins and understanding the numbers. And if my understanding is that, like most people, they want to do financially well from a business that they're going to start. Certainly that's typically the objective.
Yeah.
Then that's probably going to rank lower in the list of the brands that I'm going to show. Certainly if somebody has a proclivity to it, that's something they're very focused on. Then there are, certainly some brands out there that do better than other brands in the food category, and I'll show those particular brands. But by and large, I think when you spoke about some of the other sectors, I agree with you. When you just look at the numbers at a very base level, they're better. And so it's a lot easier. And I do love that surprise when you bring something forward to someone that didn't know that it was a franchise. They're like, wait, that's a franchise? You're like, yes, that's a franchise business. And they're kind of like shocked that, like, really? I had no idea. And you're like, not only that, but it's got great margins. So let's talk about that and see if maybe it can make it into your competitive set.
No, I think this is great. I mean, thank you both for joining, our second session of the TPF Expert Series today. I think as clients see, how do we match them? Not only, to the brand, like we have this portfolio of all these brands and they're smaller than most, but we're picky about who we bring in. And then we really are focused on matching our clients. And you went through all the different types of, home service, business services, retail out there. Part of it is just finding that right fit for somebody. And I think this is really helpful for our clients to hear, and open up the curtains and see behind what we do at TPF and how we coach our people and really advise our clients on how to do this. So thank you for that today. And so for those of you listening, if you're considering franchising as a potential path to business ownership, remember, there's no one size fits all to franchising that suits everyone. Even so, there's certainly a franchise out there for you that's perfect fit. To explore options and find your perfect match, please visit us at theperfectfranchise.com. By clicking on Let's Talk, you can schedule time to speak with one of our consultants on the team. We look forward to connecting with you again on the next episode. Until then, take care.